We had highlighted the risk of tariffs as just one of a whole laundry list of potential risks to the company. And I think we have to have some humility here and acknowledge that we none of us know how this is going to turn out. It's easy to pretend that it's just a negotiation and another salvo and a back and forth that will somehow be resolved. But do we really know that with any confidence?
Well, I look at it, and the huge cash flow, the huge use of cash, share buybacks. Is the Apple financial model at risk because a president
No.
intrudes on a manufacturing process?
Well, let me caveat that no. Is Apple in any financial jeopardy, at risk of failing or anything? Of course not. It's got a fortress balance sheet. The company is going to be okay. The problem is there is simply no credible response to a demand to move to the US. You can't do it logistically. You could pretend that you could build a model that says, well, here's what it would cost. And we've all seen those estimates that it would cost $3,000 per handset or something like that to try to make them in the US. But the realistic answer is you couldn't do it. It's simply not possible. There are something like 3 million people in the in the supply chain inside
Right.
of China working at under $5 an hour on average. You can't replicate that in the United
Right.
States. So if Apple has to simply eat enormous tariffs, would that make them go bankrupt? No, but would it destroy their margins? Of course it would. And if they had to raise prices, would that affect the replacement rate and depress sales? Of course it would.
Right.
There's obviously real world impacts of this, but they're not going to put Apple out of business. It's just Apple's
Right.
trading at
Mhm.
almost 30 times earnings for what is still a largely tariff unaffected forecast.
I can't say enough, folks. This is the heart and soul of Bloomberg surveillance. Mandeep Singh on earlier, far more quiescent about the ability to manufacture as a president desires in America. And you just heard Mr. Moffat tear it to shreds. There's no other way to put it. Damien Sassar.
Craig, what do you think the cost for an iPhone 17 is going to be? I mean, I haven't changed the screen on my iPhone. It's cracked. I can't even look at it anymore, and I'm afraid to go and get a new iPhone.
I'm watching it here,
Yeah,
Craig.
it's
His
cracked.
iPhone
It's
is older than
disgusting. I
John
can't even look-
Tucker's. That's impossible.
Craig, what's an iPhone going to cost me? I mean, after these tariffs, I mean, obviously some of the costs is going to be passed through to consumers. No.
Well, yes. So Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile have all acknowledged that they would pass on higher costs to consumers. Apple hasn't said one way or the other. They've said that in the current quarter, they would estimate that the current level of tariffs, which is during the 90-day pause, is actually relatively modest, of only about 10% right now. That's going to cost them $900 million in the current quarter. They weren't entirely clear whether that included any costs associated with retooling in what they then believed would be a move to India, and maybe still believe will be a move to India. I don't know. But the operative question that you just asked is really what tariffs? What tariff regime are we actually under? Do you know? I don't know.
No, no.
Are we in a 10% and then it steps back up to 145? Does it step down to 45? Is it going to be this newly proposed 25% and 50%? Who knows? We and again, you can suggest that the likely outcome of this is a negotiation, and that
Yeah.
Apple will say, okay, well, we can't really move all production and assembly to the US. Those thousands or literally millions of people screwing in tiny screws that we always hear about. But let's suggest that we make additional critical components. We already make the glass here in the US, the Gorilla Glass from Corning, but let's say we also make chips here and we also make modems here or other components, and there's some negotiation
Mhm.
that leads to a reasonable outcome. But
So
again, that's sort of hubris for all of us to suggest that that's what's
Right.
going to happen, because we just don't know what's going to happen.